This is You've Already Been Hacked, recorded on May 9th, 2025. Welcome back to You've Already Been Hacked. This week, cybersecurity chaos, layoffs, lawsuits, and ransomware rampage. This episode, we're going to dive into some of the most impactful stories from the past week, covering major corporate layoffs, some extortion activity, and legal battles that could reshape the industry. As well as, and then our top story here, Cyber Cowboy, an RTX 5090 can crack an 8-digit password in just 3 hours. There's an asterisk on that, though, folks. So, as always, I'm your professor of CyberRisk, and again, with me, as always, is the Cyber Cowboy. Let's start breaking it down. So what's going on with this 5090? Well, the 5090, as we all know, is the most powerful consumer graphics card you can get today. Sorry, AMD fans, if you're out there, that's just where we are right now. If you can get it, if you can find it. And right now, some researchers have found from Hive Systems that a single 5090 can break an 8-character numeric character password in 3 hours. For reference, that's an hour faster than the 4090. Now, the asterisk on this, though, longer is better. In any context, I guess. But longer is better when it comes to passwords here. If you have lowercase letters involved in that, and not just numbers, it would take that 5090 8 months. You got some uppercase involved in there. It's 172 years. You got upper and lowercase. You got 703 years, which none of us need to worry about. And if you have some symbols thrown in, it's about 1,000 years. And that's for one. Well, what if we took 8? Well, 8 brings that down to, for numbers only, 22 minutes. And then for letters, uppercase, lowercase, and symbols, it'd be 246 years. We go to 12. We're talking 22 minutes for numbers only. And then if you get into the serious stuff like the A100s that, in the tens of thousands or 20s of thousands for your ChatGPT 3 or 4 models, numbers only is done instantly at this point. And if you had numbers, uppercase, lowercase, and letters and symbols, we're talking 3 to 5 months, depending on the configuration. Now, obviously, at tens to 20,000s of A100s, we're only talking about major corporate or nation state actors. I wouldn't worry about your cyber criminal gang at that point today. But still pretty profound. We're consumer grade stuff for low hanging fruit, making it pretty easy, Cowboy.
I mean, you're grouping 85% of the population into that, right? Not the 10% that is in the cyber and or IT fields, but you're talking virtually everybody else. And so when you look at, I often say the speed of cyber, right? And how fast everything keeps getting and how fast you can crack these things and how cheaper and easier it is. It's going to become a real problem for your everyday user, right? You're not making 30 character long passwords, 10 different passwords for 10 different websites, right?
No.
So how do we combat this?
Well, yeah, I mean, and also I think even last year, the one of the top most common passwords was 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, right?
Still,
I'm not even like you can. That's something anybody can look up. It's pretty horrific. The top 100 passwords.
I have the same combination on my luggage.
The same combination on my matched luggage. Honestly, what I've seen and what a lot of providers of services are doing now, right? Multi-factor, which could be a password of any type of design and something else, whether that be a one-time pad, an authenticator app, a puzzle, a shape, something that is a secondary that you either have or have knowledge of, right? That's one. And what some other major providers have started to move towards are what they're calling passwordless security solutions or passkeys, right? So you have a hard token, say your phone, and that is where the authentication mechanism is for whatever account. Doesn't matter if it's on the phone, on the computer, whatever. As long as they're both connected to the same network, which this gets into a different problem that could arise itself eventually. using your fingerprint or using whatever mechanism you have that unlocks the credentials vault on the device will then authenticate you and allow you to proceed with that level of service. Now, the fact that you have stuff transiting over a network should be encrypted. But man-in-the-middle attacks, if they could figure out what the encryption is, that could be a problem at some point too. And with the rise of quantum computing, yeah, I don't have a lot of hope long term.
Yeah, I mean, as always, right? The threats evolve, and so the defensive measures continue to evolve as fast as we can, right? So you're right. Passkeys, they're actually a little bit simpler and easier, right? It is 2FA again. You said biometrics, unlock the phone, you're verifying it's you. There's, it's becoming a real problem, especially at an enterprise level. How do you get this stuff pushed out to everybody? Just another real problem out there. We got to evolve our defenses a little bit faster.
Well, AI will save all of us and not cause any other problems along the way, right? So that's exactly what's going to happen.
All hail AI overlords.
Remember to talk nice to your smart devices. That they're listening always. Right. Okay, well, on that happy note that anyone who can find a 5090 could cause you a problem, let's move on. In the real-world SOC environment, which I think this will have a greater impact, CrowdStrike recently announced a $10 billion ambition that has led to 500 layoffs within the company. This is part of their strategy to reach that $10 billion number in revenue. The CEO cited automation and AI efficiencies as key factors behind the decision. And this raises some of the concerns about the future for cybersecurity jobs and the ever-increasing reliance on AI-driven security solutions. Now, I will be honest, I did not research too deeply on this. I don't even know if they publicly announced what type of roles were in those 500 jobs. I would argue that this is likely to happen more and more frequently with work roles that require not just repetitive tasks, but tasks that are that can be easily replicated through a large language model, right? Even reasoning models, I think, are something else too. That do this. So I would say the roles that have that potential are the ones that would be likely to be first to be let go. And if they can save money, they're a business, right? Their whole point is to make money. And I am not here to advocate a pro or a con in that. That's just what it is. There's an impact to people regardless of what industry you're in. Corporate institutions are designed to make money, either for themselves, for their owner, or for their shareholders. That is their first and primary concern, and everything else, for better or worse, is secondary.
This is a wild topic because you look at, you hit on it right. Like it's likely low-level analyst type positions, right? They're streamlining, they're automating things. It's going to become interesting. You're going to start killing off the ability to enter the field. Those entry-level positions to get experience aren't going to exist. So how do you continue to hire new and train people with experience if you're getting rid of all those entry-level positions?
Well,
they're going to have to think long-term. They got to think long-term and figure out a way to combat that now, or you're not going to have any mid-level people.
I think that the bigger question you just opened up is that bar on what is quote-unquote entry-level, right, going to continue to go up the stack? And I think the answer long-term is yes. So how I think that you asked the spot question. How do you get into the field if all the entry-level work is now so complex that it's not really entry-level anymore? And you can make the argument that's what institutions are for, educational institutions. But they are dealing, and this could be a topic for an entire show. They're dealing with their own problems with AI right now, and what students are using AI for to complete work. So I don't know that that's an answer to this problem, right? Because in general, what you would do is you push some of that stuff into institutional knowledge, into education, so that those people have that educational knowledge when they enter the workforce. So they're already they should have already been practiced at a certain level before they start working. But yeah, I don't see that. I see higher education having to deal with a crossroads of problems in and of itself right now.
And they are not
This is
equipped.
interesting.
Yeah, and they're not equipped to do that. I work with some workforce development boards, and the universities are always behind because it takes a long time to get new curriculum approved, developed, and approved. And the second thing I always harp on them on is you've got to get away from so much lecturing and high level, and you've got to get hands on. These students got to do labs and they got to demonstrate, and
The
that's
problem with it,
almost
though,
more important than the other. You know what I mean? To get them to come out of college with some sort of experience.
the problem with that, though, is students today, and this is a little bit off of where the subject is, but I think still related, are using AI to give them the step-by-step actions they need to take to do the lab environments. So they're not even actually using creative thought or reasoning on their own. They're just following an instruction sheet, which, okay, for an entry-level job, sure, give me every instruction sheet you got. That's perfect, right? But at the same time, you're not developing your own skill level if you're doing that 100% of the time. So how are you going to know when something doesn't fit the A to Z instruction map, but is still in the same ballpark? I mean, I think that's going to be an art that's going to be lost over time in this field, and just about any other that you could have a level of automation added to.
It really is, and I'll take the art over the science almost any day. It, it, yeah, people got to start thinking through that. Like, got to do it now, otherwise you'll have a massive gap, and it'll take time to fix it.
I think we are already behind the power curve for that gap, right? I think this goes back to where this story starts. Businesses want to make a profit. That's why they exist. And they are going to maximize their ability to make that profit through whatever most efficient means they can. And if AI and automation is going to get them there faster, that business, that sector is not going to wait for education to catch up. So
Right.
we're already on that path. The only way that slows down, and I frankly don't see it happening for any number of reasons, is through legislation. And I don't see that train, that train is slower than the education train. So I just don't see it happening.
So for our listeners out there, we need your help. Start thinking about it. Talk to your leadership.
Right, because
Get a plan of
ultimately, right,
action.
that's money. They're going to make money today.
Right.
And then they're not going to have people ready to replace the people that leave the workforce at a certain point. Now, you could argue maybe the advancements in AI will bridge that gap, and to a point, I think they will. But there's going to be, at some level, one would hope, a human in the loop, right? And if it's turtles all the way down at some point, is it really trustworthy? And that's the other question. And I just don't know how fast we're going to make it to that point.
Yeah, you're going to see senior level people retire, mid level people move up, and there's going to be nobody to replace the mid level.
Just remember to tell your smart assistants that you care about them. All right, what do we got here? The Power School ransomware attack, which is Power School is a software provider, admits that they have been attacked by ransomware and is now extorting school districts. Not Power School, the ransomware. I want to make sure that language is clear on that. Power School is a cloud-based education software provider, and they suffered a massive ransomware attack in December. Despite paying millions in ransom, the attackers have continued to extort school districts that rely on PowerSchool services. This breach exposed sensitive student and faculty data, raising concerns about cybersecurity in education. And we had two stories in the last couple of weeks, very similar about trust in school. One was a human element story. The other one was an attack. And here's another example, right? Just because the ransomer says, "Give me the money and I'll stop," doesn't mean they actually will.
Don't pay, don't pay. They keep doing it because people pay, right? Kidnappings, ransoms still happens because people pay, so they make money. And absolutely, you said it. Just because you pay doesn't. Oh, you paid the bad guy and they didn't give you your stuff back. What? Like, come on, we got to wake up. I fully understand their logic behind why they're paying.
Make
But
the
that's
pain go
irrelevant.
away. Make the pain stop. That's the logic, right? I get it. I
Yeah,
get it.
and keep and maybe get our stuff back, right? But they could pretend to give it back to you. They're gonna make copies. Like, come on, like it's terrible, but don't pay them and move on and hopefully learn. You know what I mean, from the attack and how to back up your systems, and everything else. But the more you pay, the more lucrative the ransomware business becomes. That's why you see ransomware as a service. It's so lucrative. You have business models around ransomware.
Which is just comical to me. Again, wrong side of the business, right? Um, what I'm interested in is, why did they pay as opposed to getting law enforcement involved? Whether that be at the local level, and maybe at the local level they don't have the resources. Why did they reach out to their FBI field offices? Maybe some did, maybe some didn't. Why didn't PowerSchool get some government entities involved to go after this group? And maybe they did, and maybe that's happening behind the scenes, and we just don't have all that information, right? There's a lot of supposition on my part here, but the fact that they paid out tells me they just wanted the pain to go away. And they felt that, but if they could get the pain to stop, maybe reputation damage wouldn't happen. But as we can see, here we are going into the 5th month of 2025, and this happened in the last month of 2024. Oh, their reputation is definitely getting hammered more and more. And not just by what's in us, by all of these school districts that are going to talk to each other and be like, I ain't trusting their stuff anymore.
Right. And so Power School, they're based out of California and they did pay, but what happened was they took the money, but then they reached out to all of the individual schools that they got data on from Power School, and now they're threatening the schools. So it compounds, and they're like, okay, yeah, well, you paid, but now we're going to go after all the individual schools that we have information on and try to get more money.
One attack, double the price. That's that's their business model, and if it's working for them, GG's. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, these school districts need to work with their chief law enforcement agency or officer in their area to really fight this, because at this point the information is gone. It is gone. These people have it, and that's its own problem. There's nothing they're going to do. There's no amount of money that you can give that's going to change that as a reality.
Right.
So now you have
talk
to
about
work the other route.
Yeah, and we've harped on brand damage and reputational damage. Just to compound that point, I'm reading that the school district in North Carolina was assured by Power School that the data compromised was not shared and had been destroyed because they paid the ransom, and they believe that. And now North Carolina's got to come out and be like, "Oh, turns out that was wrong," right?
Well, and now they can sue Power School too, and that's exactly what's going to happen in this scenario.
Yeah, double black
Again,
eye.
professor supposition.
Yeah, logically, right? Like, it is, and if this says they are working with law enforcement, right? Of course, but yeah, actually, Power School has already announced that it's looking at multiple class action lawsuits. They cover 60 million students, 18,000 educational customers. right?
Wow.
Even if they only lost half, uh, 30 million students, just and it makes you, you know, so upset at the ransomware people. Hopefully that's where the anger lies, right? With these trying to keep our show PG, but these dirtbags that are willing to have children involved is just despicable.
Yeah, when you go after that, and the reason they're going after kids' information is because they know adults will pay because it is kids, and
Right.
that it is absolutely disgusting and deplorable. So I think you kept it clean. I think you're good. You're good. All right, let's move on to the next one. This is one that has been around for quite some time, at least in one form or another. So Meta has uh, won a lawsuit against the NSO group for $168 million, which, all things considered, is a paltry amount by what we're seeing. Um, for those that don't remember, the NSO Group is an Israeli spyware firm known for its quote-unquote controversial surveillance tools, one of which was known as Pegasus. This case shed some lights on the inner workings of cyber espionage and revealed how spyware is used to target individuals and organizations. NSO's defeat marks a significant legal precedent in the fight against government-backed surveillance operations. This is interesting to me because I think it opens up the door globally to have cases be brought against government contractors, potentially. If the contractor was responsible for tool development and that tool was used against an organization, does that organization have an ability to counter that legally at this point?
That is a great question. I've never thought about that. For those that don't know, by law, commercial agencies in the United States, commercial agencies, um, do not do offensive cyber operations. Period. Not ever at all. But they can be in tool development and support, right? So, just as you said, Professor, like if a civilian, commercial company makes a tool that's used, it gets leaked out, like we saw in the past, right? Can
Yeah.
you hold that boy? That'll sure make a whole lot of companies tuck tail and run, and really do some damage, negative damage to the government's ability to develop tools that they need to level that playing ground. And just so our audience knows, in case they don't know, right? Pegasus was spyware developed by the Israel company NSO Group, and it's for installation on Apple phones and Android phones, right?
Yeah.
And they market it as a product for fighting crime and terrorism and everything else, but you know,
Well, so that's what
still
they market it as,
for
and that may
profit.
be what NSO sold it as, right? So let's I'm going to talk about this from a very big point of ignorance, okay? But understand that that point of ignorance is to just make the case. So let's assume NSO Group uh, believe their marketing, that this would be a tool used to combat terrorism, crime, all the ills of society, right? In general, that's a good thing. That's what we want. So that's what governments say they're going to do with it. And NSO will sell them their software. NSO makes a profit selling software that they believe is going to be used the way that they intended it. However, depending on the terms of service and also depending on the government itself that decided to buy the software, they're going to use the software based on the capability it provides, not necessarily on the way it was sold to them or marketed, right? So, is this a fault of the entity that used the software or a fault of the entity that created the software? And in this case, it looks like Meta made the argument that it's the entity that made the software that's accountable. And that could be a turning point. I don't know. This is also an international case, right? This was not a US company going against a US company. This was a US company going against a foreign company. So Yeah, this, like you said, this could turn things upside down in a really, really interesting and systemic way.
Yeah, if there's any lawyers listening, drop us a note, tell us what you think, because I think this gets a little bit out of our comfort zone, laws, lawyering, but it makes you makes us in the community kind of be like, huh,
Well,
right?
let me add this in there, right? Let's talk about dual use technology. That's another. Add that layer into this. Something that may be used defensively, but turn it sideways and it's an offensive tool. Would there end up being liability there? Yeah. Lawyer friends, please reach out to us. Let us know what you think, because interesting case. And I think that this is going to be another a much longer term development than just this one case over time. That's my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, we'll be standing by to watch how this could trickle out through the community for sure.
And in our last story, something we have promised over the last few weeks, that if we got more information, more context, and more detail, we would bring it to you. And this is all related to the Mark and Spencer's hack that happened now almost 20 days ago. So, Cyber Cowboy, what do you got for us?
Yeehaw! All right, so earlier this month, right? We're only 9 days in, so a couple days ago, another co-op in the United Kingdom, this time a major supermarket chain, experienced a cyber attack, affected back office and call center services. How it's currently impacting that business is, aside from the significant data breach, it's impacting customer data and causing disruptions to online and in-store services, to include restocking of the shelves. So, everyone remember the great toilet paper shortage, right? The
Here
This
we
is
go again.
affecting the ability to restock shelves. Now, what we have promised, and we finally have some connections, is allegedly the community believes that these attacks are related, and they're related to a ransomware called Dragon Force. Dragon Force is a group mainly out of the Philippines, and it is believed that they are targeting major UK retailers in a series of coordinated attacks, causing major service disruptions. They believe they've hit Harrods, they believe they've hit Marks and Spencer, and they believe they've hit these grocery store chains. So here we go.
Wow.
We have a large coordinated effort targeting things, and I'll tell you what, we haven't really seen this in a while to this scale,
Definitely
right?
not. And honestly, I mean, I know that the Philippines is a large actor in cybercrime, but I didn't think that it would be this scalable against a nation state that has relatively robust cyber defenses, right? Like, that to me is kind of striking.
Yeah, 100%. And this could be related. So the group was originally positioned as a pro-Palestine hacktivist style operation, but they seem to be shifting their goals and strategies. And you could make the connection that, are they targeting the UK because of their support for Israel? Maybe. But they have definitely shifted toward, maybe we can get our point across and make some money at the same time. So, typical initial access methods: phishing, exploitation of known vulnerabilities, leaked or stolen credentials. Nothing, nothing out of the ordinary, right? We've seen it all. Pretty standard TTPs, but they continue to work. Why? Poor cyber hygiene, poor patching, poor vulnerability management.
Yeah. Standard stuff that gets us all in trouble still to this day. So, but again, you could argue, especially the co-op, right, the supermarket chain, I don't know how big they are. I don't know what type of back-end staff they have. Did they have the expertise to do all this stuff? One would hope, but maybe not, right? We could talk about the water industry in the United States and how woefully understaffed their cybersecurity is in another episode. Um, yeah, this is the this is the stuff that in the industry we harp about all the time is these low level consistent protections that we all have to do. And I think everyone that's listening that's been involved in cybersecurity at some level or a large scale organization has to do your mandatory cyber training, which goes over a lot of this stuff in a very basic way. But it's so monotonous that I doubt anyone actually is paying attention to it anymore. And I think that's where the carelessness or the mistakes is happening.
It is so bad. And I spoke about the speed of cyber earlier, right? So Dragon Force started to emerge only as late as August of 2023. So not even 2 years ago did this group really hit the map. They were initially using Lockbit 3.0 as their ransomware payload, and in just that amount of time, they're now creating their own. So they have their own Dragon Force ransomware, custom tailored ransomware payloads that they're using. So Philippines, right? They're not exactly. I'm not hating on the Philippines, right? So if you're listening to us, not a knock on you, but that is not a educational technology world leader country, right? But they still have the expertise to, in about a year's time frame, develop what looks to be some pretty darn good ransomware payloads. And hats off to your expertise. I wish you were using it for good, but that's impressive and
Yeah,
fast.
yeah, and fast. And I think AI and machine learning is only going to make that uh, barrier to entry or that level of expertise to do stuff like this or similar. It's going to bring that time down. Just like in regular corporate business, they're finding automation ways to save money. Um, Speed is going to be part of what comes out of all this. And if the bad guys have speed, then that chicken and egg cycle just has to be faster and faster. And I again, as I started off the episode, I don't have a lot of hope for us right now. I hope I'm wrong, but we have to come up with better methods and tools and techniques on the offensive side, on the defensive side, to be able to combat this stuff at real time. And I just think that most of what we have today is not designed to do things at real time.
Right. And we joke on being on the wrong side of the equation when it comes to the money, but you know, it's our circle of friends and trust who we're doing our best to stand up to these groups and keep for us keep the average American safe, our allies, people that have no reason to be targeted by these malicious actors.
I wouldn't even say our allies, right? I would go even a step further. Just keep everyone safe, right?
Everyone's safe.
Like if we are vulnerable to X thing, or if our adversary who uses the same technology is vulnerable to X thing, that means we're vulnerable to it too. Now,
Yep.
you can make a valid argument on either side of that equation that a nation state should be able to exert its will on another nation state in statecraft. Fine. Not going to make an argument on that. I'm simply talking about the level of vulnerability that exists and the debate is, where should that vulnerability exist? Because if the vulnerability is too impactful across the board, then I don't think that's a healthy place for any situation to be. Right? I've always been a proponent, and I'll say it here too, that any type of quick and easy path for anyone inside an offensive space in cyber is bad. Conducting any level of offensive type of operation should be hard and complex, and it should be reserved for those that have the resources to dedicate time, energy, effort, personnel to doing such an activity. It should not be something where the barrier of entry is so low that a few people can get together and do that. Now, that doesn't mean that there should be legislation that stops people from figuring out how to do things. I'm simply saying that the environment should be that complex and that hardened that a few people with no budget should not be able to cause a systemic problem. That's my argument.
Spot on.
All right, Cowboy, you got anything else for us this week?
I do. We've talked a lot about ransomware today. So my parting thought is, remember, folks, backups are like snacks. If you don't have them when ransomware hits, you're going to get hangry. Stay frosty, friends.
And that's one to leave on. I'm your Professor of CyberRisk. That's a Cyber Cowboy, and we will see you next time. If you like this podcast, share it with your colleagues and friends. Your support is how we are able to continue to make this content. Thank you.